Hi, English students. This is Mrs. Peacock, and at this point, we need to look at the literary analysis essay. This type of essay analyzes a literary work by picking an aspect, so that could be a theme, tone, character, symbolism, etc., and illustrating an argument for the reader using textual evidence. So that could be dialogue from the characters or a description that the author does for the setting or for the scenario. The writer should assume that the reader has read the work. So I'm going to say that again. The writer should assume that the reader's already read this work. So if you want to imagine you've just finished reading it together and you give your reaction to it. You don't have to illustrate this happened and this happened and this happened. Point out the significance of those events. If you want to imagine the analogy, you've both watched the movie and you're walking away from the movie theater and you're having a conversation about what you just saw. So for that reason, the writer will prove a point without too much plot summary. It shouldn't read like a SparkNotes summary of, well, this happened and this happened and this happened. It's more so making an argument about the short story. If a part of the plot is summarized, it is to make a point for your overall argument. So if you are summarizing something, it's as a piece of evidence for your argument. The rough draft will be due Wednesday, July 10th by midnight in discussions, and we'll have peer review on those rough drafts just like we have for the other essays. And your final draft will be due a week later, Wednesday, July 17th by midnight in the content area of Blackboard. This paper is worth 20% of your final grade, so not as much as that research paper, but more than the descriptive narrative. The length for this essay should be between 500 to 750 words in length. If you go over 750, I won't count off, but it's just better for you not to turn in a 1,000 word behemoth, because there's a chance you make a similar grade to someone who turns in a 501 word paper. So just don't want you to do double the work unnecessarily. This is all based off Edgar Allan Poe's The Cask of Amontillado. So that is the short story we're covering in this class. So make sure you write your essay about Edgar Allan Poe's The Cask of Amontillado. You'd be surprised how many students have just come up with their own short story they want to write about and turn in an essay about something we haven't covered. So just make sure you stick to the topic. I've included a link to the short story within your content area Blackboard as well. So you have access to it already. It should take about 10 to 15 minutes to read. It is a fairly short story, and it is classic Poe. So if you've read The Raven or The Fall of House of Usher or Telltale Heart, those are some of the more common Edgar Allan Poe stories, but they have a lot of the classic Poe elements within it. This essay, formatting-wise, no surprise, is 12-point Times New Roman font, double spaced with MLA heading and style. If you need a refresher, page 192 in your Seagull book has an example of MLA heading. All of these below topics are based off Edgar Allan Poe's short story, The Cask of Amontillado. So if you have not read the story yet, pause the video now because I'm about to plot spoil a little bit. So make sure you've read the story before you finish this last bit of the video. For the themes in the literary work, so themes are the ideas that are very prevalent within a short story. So for instance, this one, of course, murder, because it does end with a murder. You could argue alcoholism, because Fortunato is obviously an alcoholic. He follows his friend all the way into the catacombs to his own death because he wants to try Amontillado, that wine, and the fact that he allows Montresor to lead him to his death definitely is a metaphor for alcoholism. You could argue that it's revenge is a major theme. Literally, the very first line is, "I vow revenge." So revenge, of course, is a major theme within it because Montresor is seeking revenge on Fortunato. And we're not told why he wants revenge. So that's also a fun part of the story that's left vague, so readers can kind of assume or guess on the motive for the murder, or if there even is a motive. So those are just some of the major themes, but if you wanted to choose 3 themes, you can, and use 1 theme per body paragraph, because remember, we're still doing a 5-paragraph essay. Tones the author utilizes. So the tones are very Edgar Allan Poe, dark, macabre, mysterious. The setting sets that up for sure. The language sets that up, but you could pull parts of the story to establish how Poe uses this to establish that tone. Foreshadowing is hints on what's going to happen at the end of a story. So authors like to put in little pieces of information that give the reader an idea of how it's going to end. And foreshadowing is how they do that. So some readers are not surprised when he's killed at the end, when Fortunato's murdered, because there's so many hints. I will not die of a cough, and then Montresor's response is true, because he already knows how he's going to die. It's premeditated murder. And there's so many other hints, of course, but that's just one example of foreshadowing. So if you wanted to pull 3 examples of foreshadowing, you could do that for your 3 body paragraphs. For protagonist and antagonist, protagonist is simply the hero and antagonists are the villains. In this one, we're dealing with 2 characters. We don't know a lot of their backstory, so it's interesting to see how readers take these characters and which elements of them illustrate that they're a villain or the hero. And really, neither of them are heroic. We've got a murderer and an alcoholic, and they both are very prideful characters. And so it's harder to sympathize with them or to see either of them as heroic by any means, because even Fortunato, who is the less villainous of the 2, has his own personality flaws. So you can argue how these characters are depicted within the story and how it impacts you as a reader. Symbolism is when an item represents an idea. So for instance, flowers usually symbolize love. Skulls usually symbolize death. And of course, when they're going into the catacombs, they're surrounded by bones. If you want to imagine, it's essentially a family burial spot. So there's symbolism for death all around them. The Amontillado is symbolic of alcoholism. It's also kind of like the bait, if you want to think of it, is he's baited down there almost like a spider, using bait to lure his fly into his web. So of course, the masquerade is symbolic of nothing is as it seems. Literally, Montresor is wearing a mask of friendship, and then he only reveals who he truly is at the very end when he does murder Fortunato. So, of course, there's other symbols. The family crest is symbolic of Montresor's family and the fact that they do not allow someone to hurt them without impunity. So, essentially pointing out that that crest shows that the family has a history of getting revenge on others. So if you wanted to choose 3 symbols and establish what they mean to you as a reader. But for this paper, I want to recommend not using any outside sources. This really is just your thoughts on the short story. So please do not pull stuff from online, because the plagiarism checker will let me know. And then also, I just want to know your own original thoughts for this short story, your own unique ideas, and not the same things that SparkNotes have published and I've read a million times. I just want to know what you think. Final draft late submission rules, the same as always. It's 10 points off every day late for that final draft. Also, all your final drafts will be graded using that same grading rubric that's on the Getting Started page that you guys are getting more and more familiar with as I continue to grade your papers. And then they also are scanned with anti-plagiarism software, so just make sure you write your own original paper and it won't be an issue. For the brainstorming and outlining space, that's just an opportunity for you to write out some ideas if you need to. If you have any questions, please let me know. Also, don't forget we have a fantastic writing center with tutors who can tutor you online or in person. If you need help setting up an appointment, just let me know. Have a wonderful day. Thanks.